Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello. My name is Abby, and you have stumbled upon a new series that I'm starting, which is so exciting. I am a huge fan of true crime, the dark, the mysterious, the strange, the cryptid, the dark history, all of that stuff. I watch it constantly. I listen to a bunch of podcasts. Shout out Mr. Ballin, Bailey Sarian, Morbid, Love. And I am also a tattoo artist, if you didn't know. I have been a tattoo artist for 5 years now, and I am a yapper. I'm a storyteller. You know, me and my dad growing up, our family would always be like, summarize, because we would just tell like full detail stories, every single little detail that you didn't really need to know. And I've just been thinking, like, what could be a new creative outlet that would be fun all of that stuff. Anyways, I came up with this, and I'm super excited about it. It meshes two of my biggest passions and loves in this life and interests and all of that stuff. And so I'm really excited to put it out there. Bear with me though, this is my first episode, and I'm sure lots of stuff will change over time. I'm really just doing this for myself, but if you watching get some enjoyment out of it, heck yeah. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and don't forget to hit subscribe. But either way, thank you for stopping by, and let's get into it. So, welcome to Ink and Evidence, the series where we explore the dark, mysterious, and sometimes unbelievable stories where tattoos become more than just ink. They become evidence. I am your host, Abby Steele, and today we're going to be diving into the chilling murder coming to you straight from the heart of 1960s Los Angeles. A woman found brutally murdered, no ID, no leads, no name. Just one detail stood out: a small tattoo on her palm. Now, before we dive into the shadows of this case, do what you gotta do. Grab your drink, grab your snack, get comfy, and let's explore this story together. Now, before we get into the crime, I want you to imagine something. Imagine you're 19. Maybe you just left home for the first time. You've got a book full of poetry, a half-packed suitcase, and a dream that whatever's out west is going to change your life. And you're bold enough to get a tattoo, a little flower on your palm, not for anybody else, just for you. A reminder of beauty, freedom, and maybe a little rebellion. Now, imagine all of that stripped away from you in an instant, and in the most horrible way possible. And instead of getting the justice you deserve and your family getting answers, you're just forgotten by the world. This is the story of Jane Doe number 59 and the ink that helped bring her name back from the dead. Now, I want to transport you back in time. It's November 16th, 1969. In the hills of Laurel Canyon, a hiker makes a gruesome discovery: the body of a woman covered by brush lying face down in the dirt. She's been stabbed, and not once, not twice, over 150 times. The overkill is immediate and extremely disturbing. Whoever did this wasn't just trying to kill her. They were unleashing something: rage, hatred, trauma, maybe panic. She was so badly mutilated that most of the physical identifying characteristics were not useful. But she was estimated to be between 19 and 23, about 5'2", so she was a very small girl. She had a very small build, brunette, and she was found wearing some hip bohemian clothes that were very fitting for the time and the place. But she had no purse, no wallet, no name. Was this a robbery gone bad, or was this calculated? We have no clue. The only detail that stood out to investigators at the time was a small tattoo on her left palm of a delicate flower, lightly inked in black. So the LAPD opens a file. They call her Jane Doe number 59. And unfortunately, this name would be stuck with her for far longer than it should have. Now, at this time, Los Angeles is already drowning in fear. Months earlier, the Manson family had terrorized the city with the brutal murders of Sharon Tate and others. Laurel Canyon, which was once a safe haven for musicians and artists, was now the epicenter of suspicion. Jane Doe number 59's murder was brutal beyond belief, but in a city filled with headlines, her name didn't make the front page. And with police not being able to attach her to a missing persons report, no one knew who she was. So unfortunately, her body was eventually buried in an unmarked grave. And that small flower tattoo on her hand, it went largely unnoticed. I mean, tattoos at the time, they weren't what they are today. They weren't trendy, they weren't art, they weren't self-expression, they weren't symbolic, and especially on a woman. Back then, it was rebellious at best and shameful at worst. And at this time, tattoos also just weren't a common identifying marker for unidentified bodies. So the case went cold. Years would pass, forensics did evolve and DNA databases grew, but Jane Doe number 59, she would just remain a number on a shelf, forgotten by time. In 2003, DNA had significantly improved since the 1960s, offering a new chance to identify unknown victims. The LAPD's cold case unit was also actively reviewing unsolved crimes, especially those that involved unidentified remains. Now, this was mainly to clear backlogs, but also an opportunity to solve long-forgotten crimes. Simultaneously around this time, the creation of centralized searchable platforms like NamUs, which is the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, was created, giving police a way to share forensic sketches and case details with the public. So, in 2003, the LAPD's cold case unit would exhume Jane Doe number 59's body for testing. Now, imagine being a cold case investigator in 2003. You're standing over the unearthed remains of a forgotten girl, hoping that this time science would deliver what the 60s couldn't. Now, they had no name to go off of, no known family, just hope. A tiny piece of tissue that would carry her DNA was preserved from her body for evidence. Now, while computers hummed and files were reopened, a forensic artist was called down to the station to sit with the skeletal photos and start drawing a sketch. Her lips, her brows, her soft cheekbones, studying the fragile remains to recreate her image. The image would show a young woman with soft features, a strong gaze, and a story still untold. Now, this forensic sketch would be released to the public, as well as some of the case details, and it would also be included on the NamUs website. Everyone hoping that somebody out there would recognize this woman. But unfortunately, still, there was silence. Nobody knew who Jane Doe number 59 was. That is, until 12 years later, someone finally recognized her. A woman named Anne Holcomb sees a certain sketch while browsing the NamUs website. It stops her cold in her tracks. She thinks to herself, "This looks like my old friend from Canada." So Anne contacts her old friend's sister immediately, and LAPD reopens the file. The old friend's sister was named Margaret, and she submits a DNA sample to compare against Jane Doe number 59's DNA sample that was taken back in 2003. And then Margaret remembers something. Her sister had a small tattoo of a flower on her palm. Now, Margaret hadn't seen her sister in years. She would be quoted saying, "We thought maybe she'd joined a commune or changed her name. It never occurred to us that she might be gone." But the uncertainty haunted her for decades. So the results couldn't come back quicker. Investigators are anxious to finally put a name to Jane Doe number 59. And with anxious curiosity taking over Margaret, Anne, and the family, could her sister still be out there living her life and she just detached from her old one? Or is it possible that she's been gone this entire time? The results finally come back, and the DNA is a match. After nearly 50 years, Jane Doe number 59 finally had a name. She was 19-year-old Reet Jurvetson. In 1969, Reet had traveled from Montreal to California in hopes of chasing her dreams and changing her life for the better. But shortly after arriving, her family would never hear from her again. So by this point, I know what you might be thinking. Why didn't her family file a missing persons report or contact authorities or go looking for her? And unfortunately, the answer is pretty simple. Things were just different back then. At the time, they had received a postcard from Reed shortly after she had arrived in Los Angeles, and after that, silence. Her family had assumed she had chosen to disconnect, that maybe she had joined a commune, she's starting a new life, or simply just exploring her newfound independence in California. And also, she was an adult, so her disappearance just wasn't alarming enough to involve authorities. But when Margaret saw the flower tattoo in the photos, her heart broke. A piece of her sister still trying to speak. But identifying her didn't solve the case, it only deepened the mystery. Who killed her and why? Reed had briefly mentioned a man named John. She said he had intense eyes. Maybe he had something to do with it. Some people also think that maybe she crossed paths with the Manson family at some point. Laurel Canyon was their territory. Some even believe that John, the man Reed came to meet, had ties to the Manson family. Now, there were whispers at the time of a man named John or Gene. The details are a bit unclear, but he was intense and charismatic, the kind of person that would make you feel important until you weren't. Laurel Canyon had become a war zone of flowers and knives, and for a girl like Reed, trusting the wrong person meant the difference between a new beginning and a brutal ending. Now, let me place you back in time again to the fall of 1969 to walk alongside Reed. Reed may have been walking down Sunset Boulevard, ducking into a diner, scribbling poetry into her book. She had just arrived from Montreal. Maybe she had stars in her eyes, maybe she was running from something. But either way, the streets were buzzing with counterculture, peace signs and protests, and the smell of incense and something maybe a little bit more earthy. But something else also lingered in the air. Fear. Now, she had to have been aware that the Manson murders had already happened. Although she might have been more self-aware than usual about the people and places she went, it didn't take much convincing back then, especially for a 19-year-old filled with hopes and dreams. So Reed might have met someone. Maybe his name was John. Maybe he was kind, maybe he was magnetic, and maybe he offered to show her around. And maybe, unfortunately, she trusted him. Or maybe she was just the wrong place at the wrong time, and being young and quite small and all alone left her too vulnerable. The timing was right for the era for the murder to potentially be linked to the Manson murders. The brutality, the location, the fear, but there was no conclusive link. And there is still no known suspects, no known motive, just more questions. Now, tattoos aren't always about style, and in Reed's case, her tattoo was the only part of her identity that endured throughout the years. Today, tattoos help solve crimes all the time. From prison tattoos revealing gang affiliation to unique ink helping identify John and Jane Doe's. For forensic investigators these days, tattoos can be just as telling as fingerprints. Reed's flower was a small act of self-expression, but it ended up being the lifeline back to her real name and part of her story. While this case remains unfortunately unsolved, Reed Jurvetson was more than just a cold case. She was more than Jane Doe number 59. She was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. A girl with dreams who got on a plane to California and never came home. And thanks to a little ink, she wasn't forgotten. And her family and friends, although tragic, did get closure to the unknown. But she didn't just forget about them either. But Reed's story isn't just tragic, it's symbolic. This story is a haunting reminder of how easy it is for someone to disappear, and how something as simple as a tattoo can become their final voice. It's about how someone can just vanish in the noise of a city, in the headlines of a violent era, and be completely forgotten by the world. About how identity can just be completely stripped away until the only thing left is ink. A tiny flower, a whisper from the past, and a reminder that no one, no matter how forgotten, is ever truly gone. You've been listening to Ink and Evidence. If this story moved you, please feel free to share it, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can also follow me on Instagram and TikTok if you want to see my daily life, my vlogs, my tattoos, all of that fun stuff is on there, or for more haunting stories. But this is my first episode, so don't go looking for those quite yet. And with that, I'm Abby, and I will see you in the next episode of Ink and Evidence, where tattoos tell the truth.